morning, I'm Agustín Zepeda for NewZtar Intelligence. Here is your global briefing for Monday, May 25, 2026. President Trump says negotiations with Iran are progressing toward ending their conflict, but warns negotiators not to rush. Iran acknowledges a deal is taking shape, but says major obstacles remain. Trump is linking any agreement to expansion of the Abraham Accords with additional Muslim-majority countries. But here is where the coverage diverges. American media claims the deal is nearing completion, while Middle Eastern outlets say it is not imminent. Israeli media reports evacuation orders for Tehran ahead of strikes even as peace talks proceed, creating timeline confusion. Pope Leo XIV has released a 42,000-word encyclical calling for regulation and disarming of artificial intelligence. The document represents the Catholic Church's most comprehensive statement yet on emerging technology. It specifically targets big tech companies and calls for disarming AI weapons systems. But here is where the coverage diverges. American and European outlets emphasize commercial AI regulation and big tech, while Russian and Middle Eastern media focus on disarming AI weapons systems. Indian media uniquely reports the Pope also issued a historic slavery apology. Russia has issued warnings of systematic strikes on Kyiv and called for evacuation of foreign nationals from the Ukrainian capital. The threats come amid continued military tensions in the region. Moscow is signaling an escalation in targeting of Ukraine's government center. But here is where the coverage diverges. Russian media frames this as legitimate military necessity, while American and European outlets treat it as escalatory threats. Coverage intensity varies dramatically, with Western outlets downplaying the story relative to Russian prominence. Trump's push to expand the Abraham Accords as part of the Iran deal is putting Pakistan in what analysts call an existential bind. The administration is seeking additional Muslim-majority countries to normalize relations with Israel. Pakistan faces pressure between U.S. demands and domestic political constraints. But here is where the coverage diverges. Indian media emphasizes Pakistan's existential dilemma prominently, while American outlets barely mention the South Asian implications. Middle Eastern sources focus on broader regional realignment, but avoid naming specific countries under pressure. Over 3,000 protests have been staged across the United States opposing the emerging Iran deal. Demonstrations reflect sharp domestic political divisions over the negotiations. Critics argue the deal makes too many concessions to Tehran without addressing core security concerns. But here is where the coverage diverges. Chinese state media prominently features the 3,000 protest figure, while American outlets provide minimal coverage of domestic opposition. Russian media amplifies the discord narrative, while European sources focus on policy substance over street demonstrations. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid has called the emerging U.S. Iran deal a disaster for Israeli security. Critics in Israel argue Prime Minister Netanyahu failed to achieve victory and is accepting a weak agreement. The deal faces intense scrutiny from Israel's political establishment and security analysts. But here is where the coverage diverges. Israeli media portrays this as an existential security failure, while American outlets frame it as routine political opposition. Middle Eastern sources emphasize regional realignment concerns that Western coverage largely ignores. That is your NewZtar Intelligence briefing for Monday, May 25, 2026. News in every angle, every morning. I'm Agustín Zepeda. Stay informed.